Coming up on today's episode of the Money Pants Podcast, the magic of individual time. Is it just for kids? How to get started, what to expect, does it really work, and mistakes to avoid. All this and more, but first, the joke of the day.
Bert and Ernie are sitting outside one day on Sesame Street. Bert turns to Ernie and asks, "Hey Ernie, want to go get some ice cream?" Ernie replies, "Sure, Bert." Hello everybody, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Money Pants Podcast. We're your hosts, Hannah and Fontaine Judd, and we're the proud parents of 7 sons and 6 daughters, ranging in age from college student to toddler. We're both BYU graduates and the creators of Money Pants. Head on over to CaptainMoneyPants.com to learn more about what we do and what we're all about. Today's topic is about spending individual time with family members. This is the third in our 3-part series on surviving quarantine, or summer vacation, or long family trips, or pretty much anything where you're together with your family for a long extended period of time. Now, in the first part, we talked about stopping bribes. And the whole idea there was that a lot of times when you're in a crazy situation, you're going to bribe or resort to giving your kids something just to leave you alone so you can get your work done or so you can have a bit of peace. And we talked about that at length, where those work short term, but it is definitely not a long-term solution. And so we're like, instead, set up rewards. And so that led into the second podcast, which was don't over-reward. Because a lot of times, parents will say, oh, I want my kid to work so bad. And there's a whole bunch of reasons why you would over-reward. But, maybe you end up paying your kid $20 for mowing the lawn when it should have been like $3. Because then they're not motivated next time to mow the lawn. Again, if you over-reward, it can undermine your system and it's not effective long-term either. Which then, and we talked about that, where over-rewarding, under-rewarding, striking that perfect balance that rewards do work, but you have to have a balance between responsibility, what's been given, et cetera, et cetera. And then
we forgot to mention something in that podcast.
What?
We forgot to mention that Christmas and birthdays, going overboard on those sometimes.
Yeah, we got to.
There are so many ways that you can over reward so that your kids don't have anything left to work for. So if you're buying your kids everything they could possibly want on
or
their
if
Christmas,
we didn't even talk about grandparents or family or friends.
So that topic of okay.
Oh no, we are not exhausted. That topic is not exhausted.
Yeah.
We have to go back to that for sure. But yeah, that's a good point. And then also what to do when grandparents give gifts.
Yeah, no, that's another podcast.
So
I think that's
and we'll get there.
Podcast, yeah.
So we talked about stopping the bribes. We talked about rewards. And then that actually leads us into today's topic, which is spending individual time with family members. Now, I want to point out, I didn't say spending individual time with kids. I'm talking every member of the family. So as the parents, you should be spending individual time with every member of the family, including, wait for it, your spouse. You and your spouse have to have that one-on-one time. It's critical. Hannah, you're going to get into this in a second, but I wanted to mention that I read an article, maybe a month ago now, and I can't find it, and it bugs me. I can't find it, but
we were looking for it. We were looking for it for this podcast.
But I had read this concept decades ago. And then I read another article recently that reminded me of this article that I read decades ago, and it was basically touting the same thing. And that it was research shows that spending individual time with children had a stronger, more long-term, better effect on their behavior than anything else. And we just talked about, don't bribe, don't over-reward, don't under-reward, make sure you reward and all that. But the fact is, and those are good, and those are necessary to have in place. But the thing that really kind of clinches it when you're trying to work on behavior, especially behavior issues or behavior problems, is one-on-one time, where spending that time with a kid, just you and just them, nobody else, no other distractions, that had more of an effect, more of a positive effect on that kid's behavior than anything else that parents did.
Yeah, and then we mentioned in an earlier podcast the Harvard Grant study where it dealt with the future success of children.
Oh, that super long one's been going on for like 75 years?
Yeah, the one that's, the most thorough test that has ever been done. And they found that the people who grew up to be successful Usually they had two things in common. One was they had learned to work
Right, and we did.
and have
Yeah, we talked about
responsibility
that.
at a young age, which is what the money pants concept is about, is giving the responsibility. But then the other part was that they had strong relationships and had love. And so this spending one-on-one time with your kids, nothing communicates I love you than putting everything else aside and giving someone your undivided attention. And I mean, even think about it like you're in a meeting with a boss and somebody's like, or you're trying to talk to somebody, let's say at work, and they're not even looking at you. They're scribbling on paper. They're checking their phone. They're not even willing to look up at you. How does that make you feel? You don't feel important. You don't feel.
I remember when I was a little kid, I was probably, 6, 8 years old. And I went to go visit my grandma. And I wanted to sit down and talk to my grandma. Because that's what little kid, it's grandma.
Yeah.
And she was home. She was a stay-at-home mom. She it wasn't like she was working. And I sat down. I wanted to talk to her. And I remember vividly, I could not get her to sit still and to look me in the eyes and have a conversation. And it stuck with me all these years. That's really weird. But also, it told me, and looking back, I can look at back now, I didn't know at the time, but it told me that I wasn't important. I wasn't valuable enough for her to spend her time on. And that really hurt my little 8-year-old feelings. And I'm like, man, I guess grandma doesn't really care that much about me.
Yeah.
Won't go into details, but it was really.
But that's what it communicates, whether or not that's how she felt.
Right, but
that's what that communicated to you.
And I seriously doubt she had any intention to communicate to a little. I was a cute little blonde 6-year-old kid, just with floppy hair, who just wanted to be around grandma. And I seriously doubt she was trying to hurt my feelings, but that was the end result. That's what happened, and so. Sitting down and giving somebody your undivided attention tells them that they're valuable and that you value them, and it has a huge impact on the relationship.
Well, okay, so my first experience with this was when my second child was born. My oldest was still very young. She was 1.5 when her younger brother was born. And up to that point in her life, she had all my attention. She had all my husband's attention, all our time. It was just focused on her.
She was an only child.
Yeah, she was an only child. And
for a year and a half.
Yeah, and so along comes her brother. And at first she was really excited about it, but then she started resenting this brother.
Yeah,
she's
really
like,
quickly.
Because she's like, wait, mom and dad don't love me anymore. And so then things got worse, because then she's like, I don't like this baby because it means mom and dad don't love me. So she would purposely try to hurt him.
Well, no, I think she thought that he had stolen her parents from her.
And so it turned into this, and then I started getting upset with her. I'm like, what are you trying to do? Kill the baby? Poke out his eyes on purpose? Where she was purposely trying to hurt him. And so then I'd be like, no, and don't do that. And I was getting more and more worried and upset.
I think she really was trying to hurt him too.
Oh no, she was trying to hurt him. And then the more upset I got, the more she tried to hurt him, because the more she was like, Mom really doesn't love me anymore. She just loves this new baby. So then she was trying even harder to hurt the baby. And I didn't know what to do. And now this was a kid who was very feisty, just personality-wise. We lived in North Hollywood at the time, and I made a friend with an older lady at church, and we went walking. She lived a couple streets away, and we went walking together. And I told her, she had raised 6 kids of her own. All her kids were grown. And I said, yeah, I'm having this problem. I don't know what to do to get her to be nice to the baby. And she said, well, my experience, this probably will work, is put the baby away, put him in his room, put him somewhere else where he's not around, and just spend 15 minutes just with your daughter doing something like doing baking or just coloring a picture or something just with her and just for 15 minutes. And for some reason, that's like, that calms them down. And so I went home and tried that, and I took her outside and I painted her toenails, and I just spent that time with her, and it was incredible. It immediately, because she was only 1.5, it immediately communicated to her I had put the baby away and I was just spending time with her, and it immediately reassured her, oh, Mom does love me. Mom does love me. And it was all she needed.
But that goes back to that concept, though, where it didn't make sense why you were already spending all day with her.
Yes, and that's because you were like, well, duh, you should spend one-on-one time with your kids. But what was confusing about it is I was a stay-at-home mom. The reason I was a stay-at-home mom was so I could spend my time with my kids, so I could raise my kids. I was there with my kids almost 100% of the time that they were awake.
So
almost 100%
why would spending
of the time.
more time be the solution?
So it didn't come to my
That's funny.
mind
Okay, that's funny.
that spending more time with her was the answer. I'm like, I'm spending all my time with her. And so when COVID-19 came along, a lot of people, they're cooped up with their kids and their kids are acting up. And so they might not be thinking, oh, the solution is to spend more time with them. We're cooped up together. We've been together.
I don't want to spend more time with them. I want to get away.
Maybe we need to get away from each other. That's the solution.
Right.
But you're actually in the same situation where I was, where it actually isn't intuitive that, hey, I need to spend more time, individual time with them.
And that's the key.
And
the whole individual
key
thing.
Is there was a difference between, the key was I had to put her baby brother in a different room and put him away. And so it was just the two of us. And that was the difference. And so you may find yourself in the same situation, not dealing with a baby or a toddler like I was. It will be older kids, but it's not going to occur to you that spending individual time, because you're like, no, I was with them all day. But there's a difference between being around somebody all day and spending individual time.
That is okay. And I've experienced that, not to that scale, not to that level, but I've noticed that and we ebb and flow. We're not really good at this, at spending individual time, because there have been crazy times in our lives. It's just how it is, where we used to do it. We were great for years, and then we just kind of weren't able to do it for a while, and then we're slowly getting back into it.
I remember years back when we were in a financial crisis, we just felt like mentally and emotionally paralyzed. And so like a lot of,
every waking moment I was looking for work or working. Yep,
and
exactly.
We just had so much stress. And so if there's a crisis going on, sometimes that's not what you're thinking about, but then the stress levels are so high, that would be the best time to actually do something like that.
It's even more important.
It's probably more important to do
yeah.
it because everybody's so stressed out, but it's not the thing that actually comes to your mind.
Well, the kids pick up on it, and they pick up on the stress, and it just actually and then it makes them act up even more.
Yeah. So unfortunately, I don't think I handled that right. But at one point I did realize, okay, I got to change this around. And I remember my daughter was in 6th grade, and I decided, part of the reason I'm like, we don't have any money, I can't take them out for ice cream.
Right, that's what we
because that's what we used to do.
Okay,
that was our habit.
When the kids were younger, I would take the kids out every Saturday morning. I would take one of the kids with me, and we'd go have McDonald's breakfast. We'd ride bikes, because it was just down the street. Remember on Hollywood Way, they just built the new McDonald's over near the airport.
You would take them on a regular basis.
We would ride bikes over to the McDonald's, and we would sit down. We'd have a McDonald's breakfast. Oh, it was so great. And then we'd ride bikes back home, and it was a lot of fun.
And on Thursdays, I would take them to your work,
and I'd have lunch.
And you'd go take them to the park and have lunch, and they really looked forward to that. And
then
that was
when I was
awesome.
doing really well Thursday after work, I would take one of the kids for ice cream. Remember that?
Yeah, and that made a huge difference. And so kind of what happened with us, because our our way of spending one-on-one time with our kids was to go get McDonald's breakfast, go get ice cream.
It wasn't a lavish thing, but it was a couple dollars.
Yeah, it was a couple dollars. So then when we ran into a financial crisis, and we're like, oh, we can't do that anymore.
Because we couldn't.
And
no
so
way.
we
McDonald's was off the menu.
Yeah, it was off. And so we stopped. And no surprise, I mean, multiple factors, but behavior just went downhill, like
it was
really bad. And it was really stressful.
And really quick.
Yeah. And so I realized this, but I wish I had realized it sooner before things, but it was just so overwhelming.
Yeah.
You don't know. You learn. That's what life's about. But
don't make the same mistake we did.
Don't do that. Anyway, so finally I'm like, okay, I'm going to go on a walk with my kids and spend individual time with them. I'm not going on a walk to buy something. We're just going to go on a walk with them. And so I started out with my 6th grade daughter, Ruby. And I said, you want to go jogging with me? And I don't know why I said jogging, because I hate jogging. I don't really jog. So it was a walk. It wasn't a jog. It started out with me bouncing along, and then it turned into a walk. And so as we're going along, I said, so how's school going? Probably because I couldn't talk. I'm out of breath. And she goes, and this is happening. And it was like I had opened up a floodgate and I had no idea. Because she seemed, she has this personality about her that she's so relaxed and happy-go-lucky, and she gets along with everyone. And I had no idea. She was like, Mom, all the kids at school are being so disgusting. They're being so gross, and they're telling these raunchy jokes. They're doing really perverted, disgusting stuff. And so I end up just, even though they all want to be my friend, I end up just walking by myself in recess, and I don't know what to do, and blah, blah, blah. And she just like all this. And I was like, yikes. Oh, I feel bad. I mean, this was the end of the school year. And I'm like, oh, man. But here's something. I'm not a very good listener. And I don't know why I didn't pick that up, because my dad is excellent at listening. My mom is a fabulous listener. I love talking to them. And I always feel understood. And I don't know why I didn't pick up on their skills, though. But I have been told I am a horrible listener. And so my husband, we've sometimes had fights about this, because I admit it. I don't, when people tell me things, kind of what goes on in my brain when somebody tells me a problem is I'm a brainstormer, and I immediately start going, okay, they need to do this. They need to, and I start trying to think of solutions. So my brain just goes into brainstorming mode. And it almost, I think it looks like I'm not even listening, because I'm like, okay, well, I'm thinking of solutions. And then instead of sympathizing, I start saying, you need to do this. You need to try this. Have you thought about this? Have you done this? Have you done this? You got to go do this. And
which is great when you're brainstorming for a solution.
But it turns out people don't actually want that.
Well,
they want it later. But normally, if a person's upset or they have a problem, my husband explained to me, they want you to repeat back to them what you said.
No, they want to be understood.
They want to be understood.
Yeah.
Well, at first he told me repeat back to them, like if I tell you this is this, you say, okay, so you're upset because your dog got run over, and you're really sad about that. Mm-hmm. Yes. And anyway, so my first efforts at doing that were not very good, because I would just parrot back. But as I began understanding of, oh no, they just want to be understood. They want to know that I heard them and I know how they're feeling about this. And they want that confirmed, that what they said actually went in my ears, into my brain, and I understand. I may not even agree with them, but I understand what they said and I understand how they're feeling. And if I don't say that, if I don't say, hey, I just heard you say this and this is how you're feeling, is that right? Anyway, so I tried that with my daughter, who just spilled her guts out. And I said, so you're saying the kids at school are really gross and it's bothering you? And she was like, yes, Mom, you understand. And then I felt even worse. Because I was putting all my brain power into this. Okay, what am I'm supposed to let her know. I'm not going to give her a solution. You're upset. Anyway, it was hilarious because
it worked.
Was so overjoyed that I had actually heard her and she knew that I knew what she was going through and how she was feeling. And she wasn't alone carrying this burden of emotion alone anymore. So there, that was a realization of, despite our circumstances, I didn't need to spend money to spend this one-on-one time.
Well,
I think it's more fun to spend money. I think it makes it easier because you have an excuse. Let's go get ice cream.
Well, but it's also exciting for the kids because it's not something that you normally do. We don't normally go out for ice cream. And so to go out once a week with one of the kids for ice cream, they get really excited about it. As a matter of fact, yesterday I was supposed to take Mahanrai for an outing.
Uh-huh.
And because last week was Royal's turn, and I actually took Royal and Valkyrie last week, and so it was supposed to be Mahanrai's turn because he's like, can I go on an outing? Can you take me out for ice cream? And I'm like, no, it's Royal's turn this time. And so yesterday I was supposed to take him out, and he's like, and he got so excited about it, and I didn't end up being able to because of, I can't remember what.
Yeah.
Got to do that today.
Well,
but he would come to me and go, Dad, are we going today?
Mm-hmm.
For some reason, knowing that that's coming up, they get so
that's
excited
part of
about
the excitement is knowing that it's coming up.
And it's seriously, Hannah, I would go to McDonald's or to Burger King and get their dollar cones, and that's it.
Yeah.
But for some reason, that is the greatest treat, and it's so much fun, and the kids look forward to it. It's that one-on-one time.
Well, do you want me to share with you how I ruined one-on-one time?
Wait, what?
Well, I'm going to tell you another mistake you can learn from. So I started going on these walks with my daughter, right? I went once, twice. The third time, another kid said, Mom, can I come with you guys? And I have a hard time telling people no. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, you know what? They should come along too. It's really fun. And I said, yes. Yeah, come on along.
Mm-hmm.
And that changed it. But I could tell my daughter, Ruby, was like, no, this is just me and Mom.
Oh. And it got taken away.
It. Oh. But then the same thing with Sassy, because I have another daughter who has to take a medicine and then she has to do exercise. Mm-hmm. And at first it was just the two of us jogging together, and which I don't like doing, but but then other kids wanted to come along jogging, and once again, the kid was really disappointed and
didn't want to do it anymore.
Yeah. They're like, that was my special time.
And the other kids took it away from
Mom.
me.
But because I'm like, oh, well, it's good for everyone to go jogging. It's good for everyone to get some fresh air.
But it was her one-on-one time with you.
And it got taken away.
Oh, interesting.
And so being sensitive to the fact that, taking all your kids on an outing or on a bike ride, it's not the same. It is not the same.
Okay, so and that actually brings up, we'll get to with your spouse here in a second, but I wanted to point out that some of the rules, just real quick, some of the rules that have to happen, and we hit this already, but when you have this individual time with a family member, here are the rules. No phones, no electronics, no distractions, no TVs, no music, there can be music if you're dancing, but no friends or siblings, just one parent and one kid, or if you're going out with your spouse, just you and your spouse. Only 2 people.
Yeah. Well,
that's the problem. If you take a phone, you can get distracted by the phone, and now your attention is being divided between the phone and your kid, and the kid will pick up on it. So ditch the phone, ditch the TV, ditch any distractions, no friends, just you and your kid. Hold on. So when I have, because this is actually one of my weekly goals that I set up in Money Pants, and I have that written as the requirements where it says no phones, no electronics, no distractions, no friends or siblings, just me and one kid.
Yeah.
And I have that written down. So I know that's what I need to do. Because I'll forget, like you, where you're like, oh, well, this is a great trip. I'm going to go to get ice cream. Let's have 2 or 3 kids come along. Why not? I'll spend time with a bunch of kids. It ruins it.
It ruins it.
And it doesn't work.
Yeah.
It has to be one-on-one. It has to be just 2 people total. That's it.
Yeah, trust us on this. Trust
Okay.
us.
Anyway, did you want to talk about?
It's funny. It's saying no phones, no TVs, no electronics. I've remembered once somebody gave us. You were a football coach for our kids, and somebody gave us coupons to go to Buffalo Wild Wings, and so we did that for date night a couple times. And I remember being really disappointed with the date, where I was really looking forward to going on a date, spending some time with you, because it was during that time where it was financial.
Oh,
we were
right.
financially strapped.
Right.
And
Going out was a luxury.
and so I was
Going out to eat was
really
a luxury.
excited that we were going to go on a date night, and it was so disappointing. Why? Because Buffalo Wild Wings has giant TVs up on all their walls.
Oh, right.
It's about watching football.
It was a giant distraction.
And it was a giant
It
distraction.
didn't matter which direction
we
we
weren't even
faced.
making
Yep,
eye
yep.
contact. It was just this distraction behind it. I'm like, what a horrible place to go on an outing. And even some of like the restaurants, like they want to distract kids now. Like if you take them out to the restaurants, the waiters put a little TV in front of the kids, and you're like, I'm going out with my family to
spend time with them.
not so they can watch TV here while I eat. So
That's a really good point. No, that
so-
was the problem with. I remember that Buffalo Wild Wings where it didn't matter where we sat. Didn't matter which direction we faced. There was a distraction every single direction. Wow.
Yeah. So that's important, and you may want to be careful about what venue you pick if you're going out or.
So I was going to talk about some of the ideas for, when you're planning these outings. You already mentioned jogging, but how about a walk to the park or play at the park? Some of the best memories I have is when I just took one of my kids and we played at the park, and I would push them on the swing or I would chase them around, and they just thought that was the greatest thing ever.
Dads do the best job at the park. Moms always just sit and watch. Dads always are like,
well, these are kind of dad ideas, I guess, because it's like play at the park, play basketball one-on-one. Boy, that's a great thing. One-on-one with your kid, boy or girl, doesn't matter. The one-on-one.
Yeah.
And then, of course, being the dad, you can totally school your kids, swat their shots away, dunk on them. Wait, oh no, never mind. Just kidding. Practice football with them. Toss the old pigskin back and forth, or practice soccer with them. I remember when my daughter was in soccer, and she really wanted to get better and to make the comp team. And so she was working really hard to get her skills up. And I made the same mistake you did, where it started out with just me and her, and it was special and it was unique, and there was this, I don't know.
A bond.
Yeah.
Like, oh.
And then we ended up inviting more people along, and
it changed it.
It did. It changed it. How about a baking project?
Yes.
Or color it. You mentioned coloring a picture or painting toes or whatever.
Yeah.
Painting toenails.
The kids always like it. The little kid. I only am good at boys' hair, but if I say, I'm going to go cut your hair, I take them to the bathroom and I cut their hair. It makes them feel special and cared about.
But if you lock the door, don't let anybody else in.
And
it's
you
just
talk
you.
to them. And
see, that's great.
They love that. But then also, if you're a stay-at-home mom or you do a lot of cooking, saying, "Hey, you want to come bake something with me?" They love that.
But
just
all the other kids are out there.
But you have to tell, no, I can only have one helper in the kitchen. Royal is my helper today.
It does. It makes them feel so special.
Yeah, but they'll be like, no, I'm mom's helper right now. You need to go out. But it's because they're craving that one-on-one time. But if you can I notice my husband's really good about this. He'll take something he already has to do.
Wait, who?
My husband, you.
Oh, me.
Yeah.
Just checking.
He'll take, like, let's say he has to run to the hardware store. He'll say, okay, I'm going to the hardware store. Who should I take?
Oh, yeah.
And I'll be like, oh, who needs attention? Blackstone, take Blackstone. And so he'll take just that kid and he'll buy him like some M&Ms while he's there.
More often than not. The weird thing is more often than not, I'll be in line. They always have the little treat, whatever, the stuff that you can buy, the impulse buy rack. it is uncanny how many times I've been in line with just one child and the cashier will be like, oh, does he want a lollipop?
You're like, hey, yeah.
Or, I'll sometimes go to Ace because it's nearby and they'll have the popcorn machine. And we'll make a beeline there, fill up the little popcorn bag, and one of my kids will be eating a bag of popcorn as I do my shopping.
And they enjoy that immensely. But it's something he had to do anyway, but he turned it into one-on-one time. Yeah, and so if you're super busy,
integrate your kids into your schedule.
I cannot imagine like being a single parent or or both parents working, things like that, where you have so many demands on your time. Try to look at what you're doing already or what you have to do, and try to incorporate one-on-one time into that. Yeah. So don't try, maybe instead of adding another thing into your schedule, try to incorporate it with, I have to make dinner anyway. I have to go to the store anyway. Let me transform this into one-on-one time.
And not to go too far off tangent, but it could even be something as a teaching moment where I got to change the oil in my car. And maybe your son is interested in that.
You're good at that too.
Well, no, because
you'd be like, "Hey, you want to learn how to change the oil?"
You got to be careful because sometimes they're like, "No," and then it's not really.
Yeah, but your 5-year-old always says yes.
You know what? And I seem to have an endless supply of 5-year-olds. So over the years, we've always had at least one kid who was 5, who's always interested. But the weird thing was, the other day I was replacing the belt on the lawnmower. Mm-hmm. And I had all the kids, because all the boys, I thought for sure they'd be into it. And they were, when I got all the tools out and was pulling stuff apart. But you know who stuck with me? You know who was there to the end? Valkyrie. My what is she, 7? My 7-year-old
girl.
My 7-year-old daughter was the one who was there with me to the very end. And she was there, we took it off and we cleaned it up. And she was there scrubbing with me. And she helped me put it all back together.
Aww.
And it surprised me because you never know what. Maybe it was just because we were spending one-on-one time together, but maybe it was because she actually enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Anyway, the point is, make sure if you're doing one-on-one time and you're incorporating the kids into your schedule, and it's like, I need to go do this thing, make sure it's not something they dread, because that kind of upends the whole one-on-one thing.
Or make it something fun, though. Like, and somehow turn it into something fun. Like a treat in there somehow.
Reframing it.
Reframe it.
Yeah.
So we're going to go do this. But
I want to, that's a good point. We need to go weed the garden. Billy, you're coming with me. Afterwards, we'll go get ice cream.
Yeah, or maybe we're going to go swimming. Or
okay, I see that.
I know a dad who he was a single dad for a while, and he got one of those passes to the community pool because he didn't have a pool, and he would take his kids there on outings. It was fun.
So, and then I kind of wanted to talk just briefly, like what to do when you're on these outings or when you're spending this one-on-one time, this individual time. When I'm doing well and when we're doing it on a regular basis, it's way easier because I will remember to ask.
So how did that go? Yeah. And follow up.
How's school? How's church? How are your classmates? How's your sports team? Blah, blah, blah.
And if you haven't done it for a while, guess what?
It's really awkward. It is because we didn't do it for a while.
Yeah, it feels like
starting
forced.
Back up.
It feels awkward.
And starting back up is really awkward where you don't know what to say. Well, no.
Okay, yeah. When we had 2 or 3 kids, and we were still a young couple. Our kids were very young.
Some people might argue we're still a young couple.
Yeah, but we, we hadn't gone on a date for years. And you were working long hours. Like you had some jobs where you were working 18 hours a day.
Well, I was trying to establish myself in Hollywood.
Trying to get started in Hollywood. And then I was busy with the kids and absorbed with that. And so we went on a date for the first time. And we hadn't done this in years. And we went out. And it was so awkward. We had nothing to say to each other. We didn't even know each other. And I was like, this is really weird. We're married. And it was like this awkward.
It was like a handshake, first date, weird.
It was this awkward silence.
Yeah.
Anyway,
be prepared for that.
be prepared for that. It'll start out awkward, but if you keep doing it, it
quickly becomes
really
cool.
becomes something everybody looks forward to. When I was at BYU, I took a marriage prep class from a guy named Doug Brindley. And I really enjoyed his class. But one thing he talked about relationships is that when you're starting a relationship, normally when people meet somebody for the first time or they're unsure of a relationship, they bring up really generic topics like, oh, what do you think about the sports game? What do you think about the weather? And how that person responds to a generic, impersonal question, whether it's acceptance or rejection, determines whether or not they ask something more personal or share anything about themselves more personal. And so if they feel accepted, they'll maybe take it a level further and share something about their family or their kids or something like that. But as soon as they feel rejected, they pull back to a more generic level and they keep the relationship at a more generic, distant level. And so
you end up talking about the weather.
Yeah, you're back to the weather. So with a relationship, like if you're like, oh my goodness, I haven't spent any time with this kid. I don't do one-on-one time. This is really awkward. You're going to start out with generic questions because as
what's your name?
Yeah, this guy Doug Brindley. What's your name? Yeah, this guy Doug Brindley.
Do you live in my home?
He explained it would be really weird if you were in the elevator with a complete stranger and they're like, so what's your love life like? Or some...
or if they started sharing details about their love life.
I have toenail fungus. Have you ever had toenail fungus? You'd be like, you know what? Can you stand on the other side of the elevator? Weirdo. But you don't start out necessarily with more personal questions. Right. You start with something more neutral, and what that does is it builds trust. And the person's able to see, well, how did you respond to that? Was it accepting? Were you listening?
You're testing the waters.
Yeah. And so it gives them an opportunity to test the waters, and then you can move to more personal things. So questions like, hey, so how's school going? What do you think about this? What do you want to do?
I do when I'm doing well and the relationship is there. Once you get past that, then you definitely do. I will ask, how is your love life? What's the dating scene like? The girls or boys that you're interested in, blah blah blah. How are you doing physically? How are you doing in school? What are your friends? What about so and so? You were telling me last time that so and so was giving you grief. How'd that work out? What did you do? It's a little more in depth. But then ideally, I also want to ask, how are you doing emotionally? Like, how are things at home? What's your relationship with your mom? What's your relationship with your older sibling? What's your relationship with so-and-so that you were having a problem with? Like, ideally, I will get into that. And then, of course, there's always the spiritual component as well. What's your relationship like with God? How are you doing there? Are you reading your scriptures? Are you praying? Do you feel like there's anything going on there? Is there a problem? Like, ideally,
you want to get to that point.
If
you have, but you don't start out that way.
No,
and don't feel like you have to.
So don't walk up to your kid first time you've done this in a long time and go, so what's your relationship like with God? That'll fall flat.
Yeah.
That'll be very awkward. And they'll be like, Dad, can we
not do this anymore?
But that's kind of the end goal to really to be involved and to the goal is to let them know you care. And nothing says I love you more than one-on-one time. Yeah. Nothing
Putting
says I love you more
than
I'm taking time out of my incredibly busy schedule to spend time with just you.
Yeah.
And that speaks volumes. That tells a kid that you value them and you love them more than anything else you could possibly do. Inherently, I think we know that time is our most precious and valuable resource. I'm willing to share mine with you. Clearly, I must love you or value you.
Yeah. So anyway, if you want to improve your relationship with your kids, this is best thing that I know of to do.
Yeah.
Hands
No,
down.
there's a whole bunch of other
I wish I was better at it
There's a whole bunch of
myself.
other great things you can do, but this is almost like the
Oh.
foundation. What?
There's one more thing we need to say.
What? I love you.
Yeah, no. I had a brother recently who was like, he has a large family like I do, and he had read about how spending one-on-one
He
time.
and I must have read the same
Yeah,
article.
you must have. Anyway, this 15 minutes of one-on-one time, how powerful it is. And so he set a goal to spend 15 minutes of one-on-one time with each of his kids every single day. And for me, like if I haven't been doing that, and I don't have a system or something worked out, that actually would stress me out. And then I would just end up feeling bad about myself and guilty and then not doing anything. And so if one-on-one time is something that you were like, hey, I want to try that, don't set a goal to... I don't think it would be reasonable to set a goal to spend 15 minutes a day per kid, unless you have one child maybe. Instead...
Oh, let's just say you have 4 kids. That's an hour
Yeah.
every day. I guess that's not unreasonable, but for us with
I don't know.
kids,
I get
that'd be
overwhelmed.
6 hours a day.
I get overwhelmed. So
6
I just can't
hours
do that.
a day. No, 3 hours, whatever. My math is bad.
What's I think a more reason, like if you're not doing this and you'd like to start with something reasonable. And something reasonable would be, hey, on Friday nights, my spouse and I are going to go out, just the two of us, and we're going to spend time together. And
You can even set a time limit. We'll be home by 10.
Pick one other day of the week, like lunchtime or right after when school gets out, and say, I'm going to take someone out to lunch, or on this day, on Thursdays.
Or we're going to walk together around the
just
block.
Pick a day, pick one day of the week, say that's going to be my outing day. And
that worked the best for me.
Yeah.
When it was Thursday
It was
after
scheduled.
work.
It was
The
something
kids
you
did. They
knew.
looked forward to it. They knew it was coming up, and it was on the calendar. And I knew I could plan accordingly, and I didn't put anything else in the way. And because other things will come up.
Yeah.
If it's open ended, like, oh, this week I'm going to spend
Sometime
one-on-one
this
time.
week
no,
I'll do it.
You should schedule it. Put it on the calendar. Let the kids know,
Assign a date
because
to
it'll also
it.
keep you honest. They'll be like, hey,
Today's
the day, and you're
today's
like,
the day we're going.
dang it, I was going to go bowling. Okay, yeah, all right, fine, here we go.
Anyway, so but set something reasonable, because that makes a difference. Just if it's one kid once a week, even if you have a bigger family, if you weren't doing it before and you start doing once a week, that will make a difference.
Yeah.
And so just start there. And make it reasonable for yourself to move in that direction.
Excellent. I love that. And that's all the time we have today. Thanks for tuning in. Enjoy another fascinating song by Falcon Jasper. See you next time.